Did you say you wanted an hour of hardcore St. Louis Cardinals talk about the long-range vision for what the 2025 season and beyond will look like? Oh, well, you came to the right place, all coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Roll tape. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Brenden Schaeffer with you. Thursday evening, May 15th, 2025. Cardinals have the off day today ahead of the series beginning in Kansas City, the final series of this road trip through three cities. It's taken the Cardinals already through Washington, D.C. Philadelphia is next, and then KC for the I-70 series being renewed at Kauffman Stadium this weekend. Let me know if you've got comments. We've already got a few folks in the live chat here jumping in. Appreciate you guys for being with me. I've got a couple of comments from Twitter that I can take off and run with that we didn't address in the live podcast earlier this week, or whenever that was that we did that. So I've got some topics I can run with, including kind of a question on how I think the Cardinals might handle the trade deadline, which I think is going to be a question we probably answer 100 different ways between now and the actual trade deadline. So different type of forward-looking conversations I think we could be having here. But if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, let me know in the live chat below. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube channel here to be able to join that live chat. And if you want to listen back to B-Schaeff Daily tomorrow morning or any day of the week, you can find B-Schaeff Daily on Spotify or Apple Podcast as well. Allison jumping into the chat, excited for the stream. Always great to hear the takes on all things Cardinals. Appreciate you, Allison. She said, I didn't think the Cardinals would win the series against the Phillies, let alone score 14 runs in one game. Hashtag for the Lou. That was impressive. I mean, for the Bats to be able to get going the way that they did last night in the second game of that doubleheader was pretty significant for the Cardinals. They really needed it after having that afternoon game go the way that it did. It's not that the Cardinals played poorly in that game, game one of the doubleheader. It's just that they didn't really get the bats going. Luzardo was really good against them, and you just kind of didn't make the plays that were needed to win it. I know we can all go back to that eighth inning and think, what if Arenado doesn't pop out? Maybe he hits one on a line somewhere, and it's a different outcome. What if Donovan, instead of trying to get a bunt down, maybe is swinging away? Maybe he gets a base hit, and the Cardinals get a crooked number there. But that's baseball, and the Cardinals had won 9 in a row, some of which came by those very similar slim margins, and so to have one not go your way, you find out how the Cardinals are going to respond to that. And then you see Sonny Gray did not have his best stuff. So you're down 5-1 right away, and you have to figure out how to claw back from that. And the offense does. And so resilience, I think, was a big factor in that. And my goodness, you look up and down the lineup last night. A lot to be excited about. The top three guys in your order last night, which is pretty standardly your top three, Nootbaar, Mason Wynn, and Brendan Donovan, all now above 800 for their OPS this season. So that's fun, too. All right, let's go ahead, and I'll roll into some of the comments as we get them. The Magic Juice for the Cardinals. Jason saying, we back, question mark. Good evening to Daniel. And Ryan asking if there is any point in the season where I see Burley taking full-time right field duties due to his bat. Give me the Berkman vibes from the 2011 teams. Yeah, we could talk about Alec Burleson. That was a guy I wanted to talk about a little bit more anyway. We saw some really good things from him yesterday. I'm going to pull up the game logs for Burley. His numbers for the season, kind of underwhelming, right? 705 OPS. He's got a 97 OPS plus that translates to. So a little bit below league average, but if you look on a more recent swing, it seems like Burleson has been on the uptick, at least anecdotally. Let's just take a look at the month of May, and I'll find you his numbers in this month. He's got a 978 OPS. It's still a small sample, but he's 10 for 34. With 3 home runs, and that's really the key, right, with Alec Burleson, is the power coming back and becoming a part of his game again. Now, obviously, right now, it's Jordan Walker in right field primarily, and so for it to be a conversation of full-time right field duties for Burleson, you would obviously be kind of giving up on Walker, or at least decreasing his playing time to a significant extent. And I just don't think that the Cardinals are ready to do that, and I don't necessarily think they should be. But at the same time, I am advocating that they give Alec Burleson a legitimate look in the matchups that make sense. And I think Oli Marmol has really been doing that. I had my tweet the other night, or I guess this was last night, where I said we may have to have the conversation about, hey, if he's swinging it like this, Alec Burleson's got to play. And largely, I feel like Oli Marmol has been adhering to that, other than for some of the matchups that are maybe not as favorable, left-handed starters, etc. You also have Gorman that you're trying to fit in there that fills a similar role. They're both left-handed bats. They could both DH on a given day, even though one's an infielder, one's a first baseman / outfielder. The other's more of a middle infield, second base, third base, in speaking about Gorman. So they don't play the exact same position, but they serve a similar function in the lineup on a given day. And so it seems like, I would say, very difficult to get both in the lineup unless you have a situation like you did last night against Arenado, where they are very clearly stacking the left-handed bats against a particular starter. That works out nicely, but I just don't think that Burleson is going to be a guy that, considering Walker and considering Gorman and everything that goes along with trying to find those guys at bats, I don't necessarily see Burleson getting just everyday run, but should he be in there against right-handers for the most part right now? I think so. And look, Oliver Marmol is a big fan of Alec Burleson, so I'm sure he's looking for reasons and ways to get him into the lineup. It's tough. It really is, with a Cardinal lineup that is healthy right now, which is a great thing. Herrera coming back into the fold, and a guy that, you figure he's going to be in there against lefties, and so he could be a nice little platoon, perhaps, for whether it's Burleson or whether it's Nolan Gorman. Again, not positionally, but think DH. But then Herrera's got a 1,300 OPS. Like, that guy just needs to be playing regardless of if it's a lefty, if it's a righty on the mound. So the squeeze on playing time is real for some of these guys, but when you look at Burleson's recent numbers, I mentioned it, the 978 OPS this month. He was 3 for 5 in the game last night. He was 2 for 4 in his previous start to that one, which came in Washington. He was 2 for 3 in that one. 2 for 3 and was 3 for 5 last night. And then earlier in the month had a 5-game little hitting streak that he had in a row. So it's starting to turn a corner a little bit for Alec Burleson. You'd like to be able to feed into that if you possibly can. We'll see what that looks like, but I also think that Jordan Walker, he is part of that runway for this year. I think there's good logic behind that, and we'll continue to see what that looks like. But yeah, Burleson's knocking on the door. There's no doubt about it, and I think in the matchups that make sense and are favorable, you're definitely going to see him in there more moving forward. Grave of Einstein just finished finals, took a shot of 95% ABV wood grain alcohol as a reward. Don't do that if you didn't already know. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I don't recommend that. I'm just gonna come out as not in favor of that as the official stance of B-Schaeff Daily and B-Schaeff Daily Life. By the way, subscribe to the channel for daily Cardinals content. That's what we bring here on the show. So if you're new to the game, welcome and subscribe so you don't miss us in the future. Let's go. Sometimes YouTube moves my comments around, and so that's what happened this time. Nodlin says, when it comes to the trade deadline, teams are usually in one of 3 buckets. We'll be in a 4th bucket, maybe even a 5th bucket. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And Space has a comment here about the deadline, too. If we're winning by the deadline, what, if anything, would you like the Cardinals to look toward acquiring? I want to take this in sort of terms of how many games above 500 are they? And what I don't want to do is say, well, how close to the division lead are they? Because I don't think that it matters, obviously, but I don't think it matters as much as what the quality of the record is, because that's going to maybe give the Cardinals a better indication in terms of, like, what's the staying power of this thing if we were to add to it versus, we don't really think it's real, so we'll subtract. Like, I could see a world in which if it's a very lean Central, Cardinals are 2 games above 500 in the middle of July, but they're a game out of the Cubs because nobody's really taken that baton and running with it. Well, in that case, I would really still say the Cardinals might be inclined to look at their short-term expiring assets and sell them, right? Even if they're close, is that really, 2 games above 500, is that a team that they feel like is worth adding to and changing from what their plan probably would have been? It's not to say that they came into the year thinking they wouldn't win, but I do think that there was this attitude of, if it happens, great, but if it doesn't, obviously we're preparing for that possibility as well. And so, if they're right around the middle, but that keeps them in the division, is that enough to change their minds on not even what the Cardinals feel like doing, but what I think generally teams in the Cardinals position would be doing with guys like Helsley, guys like Eric Fetty's, my hair is out of control. I would say probably not. But if they're 10 games above 500, let's say, I don't really care what the Cubs are. They could be 15 above 500, the Cardinals could be 5 back, or the Cubs could be 5 games above 500, and the Cardinals could be 5 up. 10 above 500 and you're, rolling into mid-July, I feel like tells you that it's a pretty good ball club by that point in the season. You'll have played close to 4 months. And I think that gives you a pretty good indication of who you are. So I would be more inclined based on that to say, well, maybe you do consider changing things. Now, the question for Space was, what, if anything, would the Cardinals potentially look toward acquiring? I don't really know what to say about that right now because I don't know what they need. If there's a need that emerges, it's probably injury-based, or it's based in maybe the Cardinals shifting their ideology from this runway for guys like Gorman and Walker, where maybe those guys end up, being positions that you're trying to replace with a more proven asset to be able to compete right away. I don't think the Cardinals would do that in terms of a short-term addition. Like, I don't think they're adding anybody at the deadline who's on an expiring contract. I don't know what they would have to be, 15, 20 games above 500 to say, yeah, this is like a win-now season where we are trading assets from the future to get better in the present. I don't think that happens regardless. I guess I could see a bullpen add because the costs could be minimal. And so maybe the years of control on a relief arm, if they decide they need one, would not necessarily fall into that bucket. But otherwise, I just don't really see the Cardinals trading assets that Chaim Bloom could be using to build the organization next year for a chance to improve the team this year. That being said, could you make a bold trade? Could you make a creative trade? Could you trade guys who have control for guys that have control? But maybe it's a case where you're looking for a more proven option that's got a couple of years attached, but maybe he's got a higher salary. Maybe the other team will eat some of that salary in order to take a chance on maybe one of your guys whose runway is running out. Like, are those Gormans and Walkers and, the guys of that tier, are they potential trade candidates if the Cardinals are 12 games above 500 in mid-July, but their OPS is 502? I can't sit here and say, no, the Cardinals are just going to proceed as they have been. So, I would leave the door open for that possibility, too. As far as what they need, I think it would be based on who's hurt. Do they lose some starters? I could see starting pitching being the need. Because right now, you think about the depth in the minors, there's a lot of it's hurt. Sam Roberts is on the IL, had Tommy John. Quinn Matthews, Tink Hens. I've been asked about those guys. I don't really have a great answer for you on those guys. We'll see them when we see them. I don't have any awareness of how soon that's going to be. And so, you can't necessarily count on those guys to be depth for your organization at the big league level right now. You just don't know what's going to happen with that. So that's sort of my thought on what would they need. Brandon Price starting pitching, because if you lose one, McGreevy's up. But what happens if you lose two? Well, Steven Matz is in. But could they also be trading away a Matz or a Fetty at the deadline while adding somewhere else? I could see that type of, zero-sum deadline where you might make a move that looks more like a sell move, but then you can make another move that looks more like a buy move. Like, could you trade Helsley and then still acquire another reliever that could kind of help you fill the gap there, but Helsley just has so much value that you have to consider it? I don't know that John Mozeliak has the deftness in the market to do that. I would hope he does. I would be really compelled to see that play out, but I don't know if we've ever really seen that from the Cardinals necessarily, and so it's kind of hard to say that we would this year, but maybe John Mozeliak in his last year says, I'm plenty capable. I've had reasons in the past for not doing it this way, and now I'll show you. Here's what I'm going to do. Wouldn't shock me if that happened, but it would be bold, and a bold deadline could be a lot of fun. Micah says, random thought, but isn't it funny how torpedo bats haven't been mentioned again by basically anyone after the first week of the season? But you do wonder if a bat change could help someone like Walker. Yeah, that's good. I don't know the extent to which Walker maybe has tinkered with the bat that he's using, but you're right. We heard a lot about the torpedo bat and then basically hasn't been brought up again. I think it was born of the Yankees using it to hit a lot of home runs and doing it against one of their former pitchers, right? I think it was the Nestor Cortez game that they had that big coming out party with the torpedo bats. So that's probably why it got a disproportionate amount of attention when it happened. But it is interesting that I don't think I've thought about a torpedo bat in 3 weeks, and it's kind of weird. Fangraphs has Walker as a negative defender. Not buying that one. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't really buy, and look, Fangraphs is a great company, great website. All the analytics companies that are putting out, baseball stats that make us smarter about the game, I think it's great that they all exist. Do I have to subscribe to every single one and every single stat for that matter? No, especially on the defensive side where I just think things get lost. Like, I'm not a big fan of StatCast catch probability. Not going to lie to you. I've seen too many examples of, them saying one thing and then it changes an hour later. Like, no, it's actually this. I am convinced that at times a player that has made an above play, like a plus play, to be able to get to a ball and catch it, it's almost like the system adjusts and goes, well, it couldn't have been that hard if he did it. Like, I don't really understand that. And there will be somebody that works for Baseball Savant that can tell me I'm an idiot, and that's fine. I'm in a lot of ways, I feel like I am very forward thinking in terms of embracing a lot of the new age stats. There are moments where I just go, I don't have to. With the catch probability, there have been too many times where I'm like, yeah, right. I just don't. Sorry. I can use my eyes to watch a baseball game as well. Again, a lot of times that's not my attitude. When we want to talk about batting average, I would tell you that there are far more valuable tools out there to determine a player's value offensively than batting average. We'll talk about it. But when it comes to this, kind of find myself being a little more old school, going, catch probability, smash probability. I don't need it. I don't really have. It's kind of interesting as a footnote, but for people to take it and go, it's used in a way that almost minimizes a play that somebody makes, and I don't like that, because I like seeing an athletic play and going, wow, that was an athletic play, or a clutch play. Like, I'll take for an example, Jordan Walker on Monday night, ending the game with the catch that was in right center field. Was it, just an outstanding play in terms of the degree of difficulty with the route and everything included? Maybe not. I don't know. I didn't look. I do know that it was clutch, because I know that if he didn't make the catch, and he covered a lot of ground, if he didn't make the catch, Bryce Harper's batting as the go-ahead in the winning run in a bottom of the ninth scenario against a closer that has had, a little bit of a bumpy ride recently, especially when seems like when Helsley gets one runner on base against him, then it maybe becomes two. He walks a guy. It gets a little bit dicey. That was a clutch play. I didn't care what the catch probability was. And so if I'm wrong about that, then I'm wrong. I'll never get everything right, but I'll try to be intellectually honest with you with what I'm thinking. We trading Pages and Gorman or what? I see no reason why they would trade Pages. Gorman, I don't know that he has a lot of trade value, so that would depend on what you're getting for him. But no, I would be shocked if they traded Pedro Pages. Like, that would stun me to my core. I really would. Like, he's the hierarchy number one, catcher depth. We understand that, right? Herrera is a great hitter. He needs to be in the lineup. He's not the number one catcher for this team. I tried to tell people all February, like, Pages is catching more than you think he will. Now, granted, I didn't anticipate Herrera missing a month right after the season started, but they really like Pages for a reason. No, they're not trading him. They're glad he's on the team. Allison congratulating the Grave of Einstein on finishing finals, which is certainly a great accomplishment. And the Grave of Einstein, the recent finals finisher, I wonder if Graceffo is going to get an opportunity to start eventually. Will he get pigeonholed into a relief role full time? Sad if so, but I understand it based on the team needs. Yeah, I don't actually know. That I'm 50-50 on that one, because I could see a situation where you get to next year and Matz, Fetty, who are the other guys? I'm drawing a blank. Michaelis, that was the other one I was trying to get. Matz, Fetty, Michaelis are not here because they're on expiring deals, and Sonny is traded. And suddenly you're like, well, the rotation is Liberatore. I mean, he's your number one. Palante, McGreevy. And then you're kind of looking around going, well, Quinn's probably not ready yet because of the injury setting him back this year. Maybe he will be, right? Maybe he's back by July and maybe he's back by June. I don't know. And he's crushing it the second half, and he looks like a dude for that season. That'd be great. Two, like, tough lefties in your rotation would be great with Quinn and Libby. But let's be careful with him, right? Just to be fair. And Tink Hence, I got to say, if he ever starts a game for the Cardinals, I would be surprised. Because I think at this point, when he gets back healthy, whenever that may be, you get into a point where it's like, and maybe the Cardinals don't feel this way, but to me, you get into a point eventually where if he can't stay durable and stay healthy, do you shift and say, well, anything we get out of him as a reliever is fine, right? Maybe I was too harsh when saying never start a game for the team, because obviously they bring him up this year and start him if he's healthy by August. I mean, that could happen. But will he ever be in the rotation for the Cardinals long term? I don't think so, because it's hard to, and maybe I'm just having a short-term brain here, but I can't think 5 years down the road and go, how many innings in a season is Tink throwing right now? It may just be that he's kind of like a Tekoa Roby path, where maybe Roby can start. Like, he's been ramping up as one in Springfield, but he's throwing like 4-inning outings, and they've been very, very careful with him. So let's say Tink gets back healthy, and the Cardinals are on that track with him, 3-4 innings at a time, just keep him healthy. Eventually, you got to ramp a guy up for him to be able to handle 150, 170, 180 inning workload in a season. So for Tink, that's why I'm a little bit skeptical there. I think he can make the big leagues. Does it come as a reliever, though? I'm starting to kind of resign myself to that, even though there's no proof in that pudding necessarily. I'm just kind of talking. So I'll tell you when it's based in, something that I think is in reality. And I don't think that there's any, I haven't heard, from the Cardinals. I don't think they're really that far along. They're waiting to see what Tink Hence can do when healthy. And I think that's the right way to approach it. But as I sit here thinking about next year's rotation, that's the context in which I'm having this conversation. I would not necessarily be penciling Tink Hence in, right? Cooper Jerpy's having had his Tommy John, so not him. So you're kind of looking around. This was my long-winded answer to a Graceffo question. I would come into spring with Graceffo having an opportunity for sure, because I think he could do it. He also might be really good as a reliever, and that might be a role that makes sense for him. But I agree with the phrasing there, pigeonholed. I don't like to see a guy pigeonholed when he could be a starter, because a starter is always a more valuable asset than a reliever of the same caliber, or even an elite reliever is not, to me, as valuable as a solid number 2 in a rotation. So just because of the innings load and everything that goes into that. So I would like to see it for Graceffo, but I also at this point wouldn't mind, because he kind of stalled out at AAA for a year or two, and you weren't really sure if he was going to get where you hoped he would. So if he ends up being a lights-out reliever the rest of the year, and let's say you do lose Ryan Helsley, and I saw a comment that people were saying give Helsley a qualifying offer. That's a lot of money for a reliever for 1 year. I just don't. You do it because you'd like to get the draft pick. I don't know if that's going to be in the cards. If he finishes really strongly this year and they don't trade him, that's obviously maybe an option, but that's a lot of money for a reliever. Unless Helsley is pretty sure he's getting like a 4+ year contract where he could double or triple whatever that qualifying offer is in the terms of guaranteed money. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. But my point with this is, in a world where, and stay with me, because I hate talking about this, but I think we have to if we're being honest about what this summer looks like. In a world where the Cardinals get to July and they're 8 games above 500, which is probably where they'll be, right? 7-8 games up, right in that between zone where we don't know what the hell to do with them, because this was supposed to be a developmental year, right? But now you're like in it. So what do you do with all these short-term expiring contracts? You probably trade Helsley if he's at his the height of his performance and trade value. You trade him in Leahy's your closer, Graceffo's your 8th inning. You could do that. And I think the message it sends to the clubhouse could tank the thing. We saw that with the Brewers a couple of years ago when they traded Hader at the deadline, and they had Devin Williams, so they should have been fine. But Devin Williams was the most outspoken guy going, yeah, this kind of hurt our clubhouse, man. He's our guy. So from that perspective, I think we can make trades like it's MLB The Show, and that's always fun to do when we're talking here on stream. But I do think that the clubhouse aspect of it is important too. So, what's the number above 500 where the Cardinals are going to go, what are you talking about? Trade Ryan Helsley. We can't do that. Any Cardinals team prior to 2025, that threshold would not have been particularly high, right? Think about, there was a summer where it felt like trade Alex Reyes, and he wasn't even, I don't think, quite on an expiring deal. He had 1 more year left, but then he missed that year because of injury. And so we never saw him again. But that summer, that July of the year that he gave up the home run to Chris Taylor, there were Cardinals fans who said trade him now because he's got the most value he's ever going to have. They were right. They didn't know that for sure, but that was their supposition, and they were right in retrospect, right? But that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to tell a team that is trying to make the playoffs. There's 26 guys in that clubhouse. There's coaches. There's manager. There's Cardinal fans. I think a lot of fans have gotten on board with the idea of kind of, retooling and doing it on the fly, and that might be better in the long run. But talk to me in mid-July if this team is in the race. If they're a game back of first like they are tonight, that could be a different story in terms of the way Helsley's viewed. But on the topic of Graceffo, you could do that, and Graceffo could be. It seems like every year the Cardinals have gone deep, went to a World Series or won the thing. They're doing it with a closer that didn't start the year as their closer. Adam Wainwright in 2006. Jason Mott in 2011. You had some Ryan Franklin was closer and then wasn't when it came time. Mujica, I feel like was the guy in 2013. So we've seen that. We've definitely seen that before. I think even Alex Reyes, the year he did it in 2021, he wasn't the closer the whole season. So just some thoughts there about the bullpen. Joseph can't see an addition at the deadline unless they want a bullpen arm. Yeah, that's the easiest thing to go and get. The bold thing would be you trade a guy like Walker for another outfielder that has some control. I'm not advocating that. I hope Jordan Walker finds it. But I'm just like speaking in terms of brainstorming and spitballing. There could be an option to say, hey, if the outfield is not quite productive enough, is there something out there with control? But I also think you've got guys coming. Like, is Weatherholt going to need an outfield spot? Chase Davis is on the rise in Double-A. I don't know if you're like worried about blocking guys, but if you have somebody that is a solid acquisition, it's not a short-term asset though. That's what I just don't think they'll do unless it's a bullpen arm and it just doesn't cost much. Jason asking if McGreevy should be called up to replace Michaelis. I think he and McGreevy should be playing some form. He has proved himself every chance he's had at the MLB level. I'm going to simply say no. I mean, it's 100% the answer to that is no. And it's the same reason I said no in the spring when people were suggesting that. And I was even less confident in my answer then than I am now. Miles Michaelis is pitching really well, guys. Like, I don't know if people quite realize how good he's been. And that could change. It could change in a moment's notice. But if I take his numbers since the Boston game, like I'm excluding the Boston game, so it is arbitrary endpoints. But that's 6 starts, so it's not like it's a super small sample. A 2.59 ERA for Michaelis over his past 6 starts following the terrible one in Boston. 2.59 ERA. No, you're not taking a guy that you're paying. You're already paying him. You have no minor league depth in the rotation anymore because of the injuries. McGreevy's all you have in terms of, like, look at the AAA rotation. Go look at it. It's not pretty. I love me some Mizzou-made Ian Bedell. His ERA is 8.5 right now. So you just don't have a lot down there because of all the injuries. And while it might seem like in the moment McGreevy could give you better numbers than Michaelis, I'm skeptical that he could. Michaelis has a 4.35 ERA, including that game in Boston. Since it, he's got a 2.5, and even his fielding independent pitching, which some would say is more of a predictive measure of what your future ERA will be, is 3.87. That's perfectly suitable. He's your number 5 starter. You don't have, I call it the gift horse theory. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You heard that before? Right now, Miles Michaelis is your gift horse, man, and he's doing everything that you want to do. He's got a 2.59 ERA for the last 6 starts. He's giving you a chance to win each of those starts. He's not going to win them all. You're going to need offense. You're going to need a bullpen the day that he pitches because Ollie's going to be rightfully careful with him. No, he's not replacing McGreevy, or pardon me, McGreevy is not replacing Michaelis right now because you've got a good thing going, and you don't have depth when, let's say you do that. Like you DFA Michaelis, you release Michaelis. Okay, you're paying him anyway. He's pitching really well, so you wouldn't do that. But let's say, like, just to play this out for Jason's question, I'll put it back up on the screen. And I'm not making fun of the question. I think it's a question that a lot of Cardinals fans have, but I want to be able to articulate, like, here's why I understand it's a good question, because you're right. McGreevy's ready. He's got nothing left to prove anywhere else, and he deserves an opportunity. But he doesn't have to have it right this moment. His development is not going to completely tank if he doesn't have it right this moment. And the 2025 Cardinals, which I do think it matters how many games they win. They never said it was a rebuild, so they're still looking at the win-loss record. They're still trying to win games. They're better for having Michaelis in the spot that he's in. Because if you do it this way, McGreevy's in, Michaelis is out of the organization, one starting pitching injury, okay, Matz goes back into the rotation. Your bullpen's a little bit worse because of that. You don't really have a lefty. Maybe Mosqueda would be your best answer in AAA as far as a lefty reliever to come up and fill that role. He's not on the 40. Maybe we'll see him, maybe we won't. My point is this, one starting pitching injury, now you still got 5 because you've got Matz waiting in the wings. What happens when you have a second injury? Which, look around baseball. It's not normal that the Cardinals haven't had any at the big league level to their rotation. They've had their whole AAA rotation except McGreevy is down. McGreevy and Bedell. You've lost a bunch of guys from AAA and AA, your prospects. So, like, Cardinals fans even know you're not immune to starting pitching injuries. It's just been that it's all happened at the minors so far and not at the majors. It can happen, and it probably will happen. So, for me, you're in a great spot to have 7 capable MLB caliber starters. That's what they have. And you've got 2 injuries, and you'll still have 5. That's the way I look at it. And Michaelis is one of them right now. Numbers are the numbers, man. I know it's kind of en vogue to kind of dump on Michaelis, but he's been very, very solid ever since the Boston game went sideways on him. Moon Knights says we'll probably get some washed-up 36-year-old bullpen arm that ends up being pretty decent, but not moving the needle much. They might, but I also don't think so. Because, think about, now, injuries could happen on that front, and that would be a reason to do it. Think about the bullpen right now. If Roycroft is stepping up into a role, if, Ryan Fernandez has not been doing great in AAA, but I'm not completely given up on him. He's in the back of my mind that someday he could return and could be what he was last year. Your lefties, Romero, John King, that looks good. You've kind of got a good thing going with your bullpen right now. I can't think of who's on this bullpen that you're going, oh, that's the weak link. Everybody's kind of settling to their role. You know what Leahy has been. It's been fantastic. Maton, Helsley. If you trade Helsley, certainly I think you would want to get something to replace him in a separate trade. But I think about it, but I also don't think we're too far down the road to really know what that's going to be yet, honestly. You, Me, and Humanity asks, is it possible this team actually gets better with the addition through subtraction approach before or at the deadline? Well, who are you subtracting? I mean, if you're subtracting a guy like Gorman or Walker because they're struggling and you're trading them a la Rasmus in 2011, which Rasmus actually had decent numbers in 11, so it's not a direct comparison. But if you're saying all right, we're trading Gorman for whatever you're trading him for, and Sajasi's going to come up and fill that role. All right, the Cardinals might have a better team. If Gorman's not hitting, Sajasi's probably just as good defensively, maybe better. Definitely more flexible, I think, because he can play shortstop. And I don't know if he's a better hitter than Gorman, but the short sample we saw from him, he was more productive. So, there's an argument to be made for that. I don't know what that would look like, though, because, guys that are struggling with their runway, and in the case of Gorman, it's been 3-4 years where we've seen him, and other teams are hip to it as well. I don't think other teams are going, ooh, but what if he can hit 40 homers? If he struggles between now and July, as he has so far, I don't know that other teams are looking at him other than just to buy him on the cheap if they're already not a contender, and they could give him runway if he's better than the second baseman they have, because he might hit for power. That could happen, but it would be with a non-contender. And so, what do those teams have that they want to trade to get Nolan Gorman, if that makes sense? You got to think about the other side of those deals. Joe says you're only going to get prospects for any trade they make. I don't totally agree with that. I think you could make a challenge trade, but I don't have an example of what it would be. Matt and McGreevy are ready depth, though. I agree with that. Mason Windu, great name, says I can see Helsley get traded and every day he becomes every safety. I think that's possible. I certainly think that's possible. I don't advocate it. I like Ryan Helsley. He's very fun to have on the Cardinals. He's really fun. He's got red lights that shoot out of, the sky when he comes in to pitch. That's awesome, right? Everybody loves Ryan Helsley. The business side of it dictates that the Cardinals may have to think about it. That's all I'm saying. Micah asks if Carp will get a red jacket. I do think he will. Yeah, I do think Matt Carpenter will be a Cardinal Hall of Famer. Haven't really talked about it on podcasts yet, but he's had some really great moments. He had a really great run with the Cardinals. He got to kind of finish up with the Cardinals this past year. I don't know if I would say he retired on his own terms, went out on his own terms because, maybe he wanted to play this year and they're just the opportunities weren't there. I think it was right for the Cardinals to move on because I think they needed more flexibility out of the bench this year, and so that's the approach they took. But I also think last year, Carpenter was here, and I think he had a positive impact on the guys that were in the clubhouse who are still here. Young players that are learning to now step into those roles for themselves. Not just the stats, but the stats too. I mean, think about that summer of 2018. Has there been in the last, I don't know, let me think here. It's 2025, decade of Cardinal baseball. 2015 was the year where they won over 100 games. 3 teams in the Central did it, but they lost to the Cubs in the LDS. In the last 10 years of Cardinals baseball, how many things have been as fun as Matt Carpenter's run, which was not just 6 weeks. My goodness, did I argue with fans about that. Go look at the box scores. It was much longer, more sustained and prolonged than 6 weeks of a hot stretch in that summer. But how many things were as fun as that? Albert for 700 was absolutely that. Nothing will ever top that. But otherwise, that's about it, man. That Matt Carpenter run was special, and he was special as a Cardinal and had postseason moments to boot. I mean, Matt Carpenter, Kershaw. I think Kershaw could probably go the rest of his life without hearing the name Matt Carpenter, So just what those moments evoke in you as a Cardinal fan, y'all are the ones voting. The Red Ribbon Committee will get him on the ballot, and y'all do the rest. Yeah, Carp is a Cardinal Hall of Famer. 100% he will be. I don't know if it's first ballot. Depends on who else is on the ballot. But yeah, he's going to be a Cardinal Hall of Famer. No doubt in my mind. Czar Alexander saying I could see a challenge trade where the Cardinals trade someone like Gorman for another team's failed prospect to see if a change of scenery helps. Honestly, a quiet deadline might be the best deadline. Yeah, you go to the way of the Blues where they did nothing and they that was enough to have them surge, right? The Cardinals have a lot more pieces, though, that are on expiring deals that make sense to trade unless they're legit in it and they decide to hold. And that could infuse some life into the team. Because right now, I don't see a hole on this roster. Knowing that they're still looking to give opportunity to Gorman and Walker, I'm not going to call them a hole. They're struggling. But the point of the season is to see what they are. And you may benefit from it if they figure it out. 2 years down the road, you'll still be glad to have either one of those guys if they're performing, right? So 2 first-round picks, you're just you're waiting that out for the time being. But a challenge trade, if you decide that, the ship has sailed on one or the other, I could definitely see that argument be made. Einstein mentioning that a QO for a reliever kind of crazy, but for a guy as elite as Helsley, I would get it. Depends on what the number is, too. I wonder, what was the QO in MLB last year? 21.05 million. So you're talking like 22 million this year, probably. I don't know, man. He probably takes it, which is, I guess, fine, but not for the way that the ownership group is thinking about things. He's got a lot of value. I mean, Helsley should, if he stays healthy, should be the most, sought after commodity on the market for contenders, looking for relievers. And Allison asking about Carp's retirement. We did talk a little bit about that, but yeah, Cardinal Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind about that. What do I think about the comments from Sports Hub STL on Mo going to Colorado after this year? Do I think that's any bit realistic? I don't. I think that was Randy and Brooke that were talking about that. I personally do not. John Mozeliak, a big part of why he's stepping down, and you might say, he made his bed, so he should have to deal with the criticism. Y'all are kind of mean to him. And so I do think after a certain point, it's just kind of like, I don't need to do this anymore. I can move on to the next chapter in my life. The criticism and the pressure is a lot in his role. I'm not even I'm being sincere. It's a lot. And so, especially when sometimes you're having to do things that you're covering for ownership because you're the guy they pay to take the heat, right? When they maybe say, we're not spending that kind of money, Mo. He can advocate behind closed doors, but if Bill DeWitt says this is the deal, then this is the deal. And so to think, and I understand the Colorado connection, obviously, but to think that he would go try to run that team with that ownership, he may be friendly with that ownership. But in his heart of hearts, I think he can see it's a lost cause. So I would be really thoroughly surprised if Mo does that, unless he just thinks it's an easy cush gig because there's not a lot of pressure. Nobody expects it to go well. But I just don't see it. I think if Mo has another job in baseball, it'll be on the business side, not baseball ops. And I hate to speak for him because the man can do whatever he wants to do. That'll be his decision. And I'm just speculating. I think it'll be more on the business side. I don't know. Again, speculating. But eventually, I believe the expectation would be for Bill DeWitt III to become the chairman of the team, the role that his father is currently in. I'm not giving you a timeline on that, but just thinking out loud, could I see Mo becoming the Cardinals team president, the role that Bill DeWitt III is in right now? I wouldn't be shocked by that. I would not be shocked by that at all, honestly. But it's also not necessarily something that I think is in the works. I don't think there's a grand conspiracy or a secret plan. I don't think that's the case. When Mo says, haven't thought about it, I believe him. He's stuck in the day-to-day of running this job. And so I don't think he knows what's next. But do I see him running baseball ops for the Rockies? I do not. Could he take another role for the Rockies that's more businessy? Sure. If he wants to be in Colorado, I could see that. But I don't necessarily think that that he's going to have another baseball ops job. I just don't see it. I'm not. There may be people who know more about what the plans are than me, right? I'm not saying that I just know everything. I have no idea. Just speculating. And now that I think about it too, the team president idea with, if Bill DeWitt III ends up kind of moving up a rung on the organizational ladder, Mozeliak would probably still get criticized by Cardinals fans if he was in the team president role. So he probably doesn't want that either. I don't think that that's something that's imminent. I was just kind of talking. That's what we can do. 40 minutes into a live stream. Forgive me if I don't say everything that's like super correct. It's kind of fun to think about for a minute, though. Mason Windu, Brenden, the team is playing excellent right now. Why do you suppose there's so much interest in roster moves and trades by so many fans? I think it's an interesting season, Mason Windu. I think it's a fascinating situation where you come into a year and they say, hey, we don't really know what this is going to look like because we're not adding to the payroll. We're going to subtract from it. And so whatever will be when it comes to wins and losses. And also we might try to trade one of our highest priced stars in Arenado. And they did try, and they didn't succeed. So he's still here. It's like there's a lot of intrigue surrounding what could happen because he could be traded at the deadline, or they could keep winning. But if they're 4 games above 500, Mason Windu, like they are right now on July 15th, those guys are still on the trade block. I think there's a higher burden of proof for this year's club, fair or otherwise, to not be a seller than it would have been in past years. Because there's a new front office coming in, and that front office would probably like to have the prospects you could get for Helsley or for Matz or for Fetty, right? So, and I saw a comment, I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but there was a comment asking about Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. And I don't know if the comment was discussing like a trade or an extension. But like, there's a world in which the Cardinals, if they fall out of it and they're 7 games under 500 on July 15th, like, could Nootbaar, Donovan be traded right now? Because this is a point in which, you trade a guy before they have an expiring asset attached to them. Maybe. I would hate to see that. That would send a really bad message, in my opinion. But I can't rule anything out. And so to Mason Windu's question, that's why I think people are asking these questions, because it's, first of all, it's a fun big picture topic for a live stream. Just because we can kind of relax a little bit, and there's not a game to talk about today, so it's an easier topic for this format. So I think that's part of it. But I also think it's just like people realize that there's an unknown. There's an allure to the unknown of what this is going to look like. So I hope that answers your question. John wants to know, excuse me, do you think it's unreasonable to expect a series win or a sweep against Kansas City? Our offense is much better. No, I think expect or hope for a series win is more than reasonable. Expect a sweep, not reasonable, because the Royals have a really good pitching staff. I mean, they're really good. They're tops in the American League, at least they were as of a couple of days ago. So, that's the rub of this series is really good. Does really good hitting with where the Cardinals are at right now beat really good pitching? Are the Cardinals going to have that consistency offensively? Oh, and by the way, the Cardinals pitching has been pretty good too. And the Royals offense is not very good. Don't let Bobby Witt beat you. Don't let Salvi beat you. Don't let Vinny P beat you. Michael Garcia, I guess, is somebody you got to pay attention to. The other half of that lineup, I mean, Jonathan India is going to be a pest. He always has been when he was with the Reds, so don't overlook him either. And Jonathan saying don't sleep on KC. Yeah, I'm not. I follow KC pretty closely. We talk about him all the time on the big show. My radio show is based in Columbia, so we talk both Cardinals and Royals. We're a Cardinals affiliate, but we definitely talk a lot of Royals because there's Royals fans in mid-Missouri. But yeah, their pitching is legit. I mean, Waka, we'll see him on Sunday. Bubic has been a revelation for them, and I think neither of them are the top 2 starters on the team. I would still say Lugo and Reagans are their best guys, but the Bubic has better numbers than anybody right now. I think the Cardinals will miss him, though, which I think is kind of fortunate. I think if Burley is going to hit like that and Walker isn't going to hit, the decision becomes inevitable. Yeah, I just don't know at what point you can do it. And if you do it, is it just like, all right, send Walker to Memphis for 15 days and then kick the can down the road? Like, what does that do to his development? All the questions that go into that. It's fair to wonder. Pushing Daisies says, let's assume we're in contention by the trade deadline. Do we see Arenado still leave potentially? Does he stay? Does he believe? 100%. I don't have a clue. I'll still use that, like, okay, what's the number? How many games above 500 are they? If it's 4, yeah, I would say that if there's a deal to be made that benefits the Cardinals because Arenado's playing better than what teams thought of him in February when they couldn't trade him, and the Cardinals can maybe get something or get rid of more of the money, it's not impossible. But does he believe? He might. He certainly might. If it's 10 games above 500, all he ever wanted to do was win. He wasn't demanding, I hate my teammates, I want out of here. Dude wants to win. If they're winning, problem solved, right? Like, I think that's an aspect of it. Unless he really, and he's a attentive guy. So if he's looking at Boston going, no, they really might win it all this year, then he might want to go. If he thinks the Cardinals have something cool brewing for this year, I think he'll be happy to finish it out, but then we might revisit again in the offseason. So that's part of this, though. All of it is unique. I said it in the beginning of the season, before the season ever began. This will be the most compelling, interesting Cardinals season to follow in a long time. I still believe that for many of the topics we're talking about, because we don't know. If the Cardinals give up on Walker and he becomes a star a few years down the road, will we ever hear the end of it? Yeah, that's part of the reason you give him the runway, to the point of Mason Windu's question. You give him the runway so that if that happens, you can at least say, hey, dude, we did everything we could. I don't know why it didn't work out here, but we remember the runway year of 2025. That's why we did that, just to make sure we weren't missing something. That's maybe why you stick with him, because you can say we went further than we needed to with a guy. I think that's the year we're in for Gorman. Like, we're in the put up or shut up year for Gorman. I don't know that this happens again. I don't know if he's here next year, if this doesn't work out. Walker, he's 22. He doesn't turn 23 until a week from today. So you can do this longer with him, I think. But, will they? I don't know. But you're right. That's a big reason to do the runway, is to avoid an Arozarena, which, by the way, Cardinals might have won that trade, so I'm not using that as a pejorative. I'm just saying guys that you thought you knew what they were, but then they turned out to be more than that elsewhere, or maybe guys that you kind of knew they would do that, but you took the risk anyway. I think that's happened enough times where that's why you do runway. That's specifically why you do it, to avoid that happening. This was the Donnie Newt question. Are they part of the long-term plans, or if the Cardinals are in contention, do they move them? Same as the Arenado question. I don't know. Who's making that call? Right? Mo's the Pobo and the GM. Chaim Bloom is everything next year. Who's making that call, man? I would not move either of those guys. I'd sign them both to extensions, but I would have done it before this year when the timing didn't really add up for the organization committing financially to anything. Worried about revenues, whether it's TV, whether it's gate, how many people are coming through the stands. The timing wasn't right to do it. But like that Donovan thing, man, that ARB hearing with Donovan, where they, I believe, my understanding is they kind of used against him some of the things that he thought were valuable to the team, And so that's whether that's his utility, right? His ability to change positions. And then they say, well, he doesn't really compare financially to what those left fielders do because he's more of a second baseman. But it's like, well, you told me I don't know the ins and outs of what that was, but it didn't land well, I don't think. Not the end of the world. He's a gamer. He's having his best season so far. But you kind of wonder in the back of your mind what that does, if that has any long-term impact. And look, my concern would be if Chaim Bloom's front office is going to function like the one he was a part of in Tampa, which he was not the head honcho in Tampa, but he was a high-up executive. Tampa's ownership wouldn't spend it all. If the DeWitts are entering into a period where that's kind of how they want to do things, all the more reason to have Chaim Bloom. Like, what Tampa would do with those guys is trade them before they lose trade value. I don't think that should happen because I think the Cardinals are closer than having a multi-year retool or rebuild. It doesn't become a rebuild till you start trading guys like Nootbaar and Arenado. Then it is, Nootbaar and Donovan. Then it is a rebuild if you start trading guys like that. Because that says, our competitive window is not in the next 2 years while they're still under control. I would do the opposite. I'd extend them. I'd extend Wynn and Victor Scott, and I'd do all 4 of them today. I know that's not going to happen, but I am consistent in the way that I have described it. So, those are my thoughts, but we'll see. We will see what they do, but all these are great questions, guys. That's why we're doing a lot of live streams this summer. We gotta keep taking the pulse and kind of continuing to get an idea for what all these things are going to be. What I hate is how many great comments we have. Not that I hate it. I hate it because I can't possibly answer them all. July 31st is about 100 games, 55 and 45. Within 5 games, I would add some help. Within 5 games of a division, what's the wild card standings is another question. Allison wants to know my prediction for the Royals series. I think they'll win 2 or 3. 2 or 3 for the Cardinals. Dan thinks it'll be a sweep. We had some folks saying I think they will trade Helsley. Allison wants to know if anybody's heading there for the games. I will not be there. My 10th anniversary is this weekend, and so we're taking a different trip. We'll see if we do any podcasts. Just stay tuned to the channel. I'll try to keep you all updated. Space says he'd send down Palante for McGreevy, but he does seem to be improving, so maybe continuing to give Palante a chance is the better move. There was a spot where I thought they might do that, but then Palante's last outing was much better. Palante's a starter. I think he serves best as a starter. Doesn't factor as a reliever as favorably, in my opinion. So if you did do something, it would be to send him to AAA to start a couple times to work on some stuff and then to come back. But right now, I don't think he needs that either. Not after how he looked in his last start. Einstein likes what he's been seeing from Honeyman. 467 on base in 21 games is really good, even for A-ball. Although he's 23 in A-ball, come on, move him up. Yeah, they got to move him up. But Honeyman is one of those guys, and I'm a baseball card guy. I haven't been in recent months or whatever. Let me zoom down. You can kind of see my behind me. Where's my right there? I got some cards under there in boxes and stuff. My opinion on the card industry right now is it kind of stinks because they produce too much of it. So most of it's going to be junk. It's going to be like viewed as like that late 80s, 90s period. Down the road, they're going to realize how many of these cards are out there and they're not worth anything. But I really like baseball cards, and so I try to be into it. But I saw and I had done those lineups where like when the lineup comes out, I'll do a lineup picture of the cards, and like I'd have to have all the roster to do it, and I kind of haven't kept up with it. So maybe at some point life will get less busy, doubt it, and I'll be able to do it again. But my point with this Honeyman question is it's like he didn't play for a while. And I was like, who's a guy I could buy into and get a rookie card or whatever and hit the jackpot that people just are undervaluing? And I was like, oh, Honeyman, you could get like his Bowman first autograph for like $5 or whatever, $8. And it was before he'd ever played, and that was probably why. And so I did. And so now when he's a stud, I'll be like, oh, that card's like a cool, valuable card. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on Honeyman. Mose is not ending his Pobo with trading Walker or Gorman. I doubt Bloom starts his that way. Somebody might be trading him. I don't know. I don't think Chaim wanted to start his tenure by trading Arenado. I think he was hoping that would have happened before he started because he began his Boston tenure by trading Mookie Betts, and he kind of had to. So that's part of it. Is Oli the manager next year is another huge topic. My opinion is that he should be. But I frankly don't know what relationship he and Chaim Bloom have, how much they've spoken, how much they've vibed. I think they would vibe. I mean, I think they see things similarly, but I don't know very much about Chaim Bloom, if we're being honest. So I don't know how I could necessarily say that definitively. But I think when I think about the way that Oli Marmol approaches the game, it feels like he would have been a great manager for those Tampa Bay Rays. So like I just kind of extend that and think it would make sense for Chaim Bloom to like him too. But I don't have a clue. I do not know. I think he should be because I think the Cardinals will have a winning record this year when they weren't expected to, and that should show you more about what Oli Marmol is as a manager. If you don't like Oli Marmol, and look, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, hey, Oli, come on my podcast, and I'll set the record straight for people. But he goes on that KMOX thing on Gas House Game every Tuesday. Watch it. Just watch it and see. You'll see his personality come out. I think it's great that he does that because I think it allows Cardinals fans who all they see is like when the move he makes goes wrong, they get to see his personality come out, and I think that's great. I love that he does that on Tuesdays. Fans should watch it because I think it gives them an insight into kind of who Oli is as the manager of this team, and I think it's worth your time on Tuesdays. How much influence does Bloom have on the deadline decisions? Great question. If they're selling, I would think that he should have influence to be able to kind of say, hey, this type of prospect, I like him. Not necessarily anything more than a cursory, like, hey, we're thinking about this guy, that guy, or we're talking to, Team X, we're looking at these guys. Okay, yeah, ask him about this guy. Maybe see about that guy. He's got this, that, and the other. Like, that might be the extent of it. If they're buying, bro, I think he probably isn't consulted that much because they might be doing stuff that would run counter to, but he's got to be cool with that. Like, he knows the deal. He's in the role he's in this year, and Mo's in the role he's in. But I think there should be collaboration, and to some extent, I think there would be, to answer your question. But does he have influence? Is he calling the shots? No, I don't think he will be. Not at this deadline. We've gone almost an hour. I've tried so hard. If I have missed anything, comment-wise, that's really worthy. My Twitter account is at B-Schaeffer12. My direct messages have always been open to the public, for better or worse. Sometimes it's for worse. A lot of times it's for better. So shoot me a DM of your comment if I didn't get to it tonight, and I will see it. I always try to make an effort. Thanks to Elon Musk, there's a ton of spam now in like your DMs, but I just kind of, my eyes glaze over. So hopefully I'll still see your stuff. But yeah, send it to me, and subscribe to this channel for daily Cardinals content. If you like this, going an hour just talking, shooting the breeze about the Cardinals, this is the channel for you. So check it out. How prominent do I think the fire Oli narrative actually is? Obviously, it's loud on Twitter, but is it just a loud minority? I'm afraid that it's louder than it should be. Like, I talk to casual Cardinals fans and, you know, people I like and respect, and they're like, when they're like, oh, what do you do? I'll cover the Cardinals. That Oli Marmol, like, it's really kind of alarming how uninformed sometimes Cardinals fans are, in my opinion. But love y'all. I think the people that like are locked into it kind of get it, but some people, you know, are angry, and like there's reason to be angry in recent years. I think the anger directed at Oli Marmol is largely misdirected. I can't tell you I've agreed with every decision he's ever made. I can't tell you we've not had disagreements. I'm saying like I believe he is a very good manager and should it be in the best interest of the Cardinals to keep him in that role. As far as the way some fans see it, I try to be very open, and like sometimes I know I am dismissive in the way I approach certain topics. If I just get tired of a topic and I'm like, guys, enough with this one. And I don't mean to, but you know, it's just one of those things where at a certain point I'm like, I think people have it I think they're missing on a certain topic. And I think it's the case with Oli. Like, he's an okay manager, that's fine. Like, he's got to win games, right, to be able to be considered a great manager. I think that's true. One of the managers of all time. That's well put. Oli will get an extension next offseason, and he deserves it. We'll see what Chaim Bloom does. I don't know. We'll see. Nathan's point is, I don't think a bad manager could take last year's team to 83 wins. I agree. And people, and like, again, sometimes maybe it's a more casual fan take is like, oh, well, I like Oli, but his bullpen management stinks. I'm like, are we watching the same team? There are times where people don't know that like 3 guys in a bullpen are unavailable that day because they kind of try to protect the players until after the game, and they say, yeah, this guy was unavailable. So they don't always broadcast that before the game. If they did, fans would have a less to be mad about, but there's a reason you don't do that, because then what would fans do? They start talking about players like they do Helsley, which is unfair to Helsley, but they say, he's so soft, he never pitches, he doesn't want to blah, blah, blah. Like, that's why that happens. Functionally, that's why you don't always have all the information. But, like, there's a lot of times where managing a bullpen is a lot more difficult than people see on the surface. And they won 83 games last year with a 22nd in runs scored ranking and a 20th in starting pitching ranking, and because he managed the bullpen as well as he did last year. Just my take. Joseph says, congrats on the 10 years. My wife must be a saint. She sure is. She sure is. And by the way, Joseph, I saw you said too, I missed a bunch of your comments. You comment a bunch. I try to get to some of the people that I've missed, but I love your participation, Joe. Appreciate you for sure. Won 83 games last year with a limited roster and with injuries and underperformance. I'd agree with that as well about Oli Marmol last year. Again, they were 22nd in runs scored, and they won 83 games. And it's not because their rotation was great. Like, they won a lot of one-run games. Granted, it's easier to press the triumvirate button when JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley are doing what they did, but he still pressed it, and he pressed it the right number of times to win 83. Manager gets too much blame and too much credit. Yeah, that's the nature of the beast, man. That's what the money's for. That's what they get paid for, baby. So I think we all get it. I think we all get the game. But I don't mind talking about it. I try to be out front and not avoid a topic. Like, if there's a topic that somebody asks about that's an uncomfortable topic and I don't feel comfortable with it, I'll at least probably read the question and say, look, here's why I can't talk about this. Here's why this isn't a fair thing for me to talk about. I'll always try to be out front about that. Andy says, fellow baseball card collector, won an auction earlier to add a Weatherholt auto from Bowman. You know what I like doing, and I haven't done it in a while? When you do a break from like a breaker online, but like you pick a team, I love doing that with the Bowmans because I'll get the Cardinals. Because, again, I still in my mind want to do that Cardinal lineup every day thing again someday for social media. I think it's a fun little bit that I was doing for a while. And so I'll try to get the Cardinal prospects. And it's just really fun to like watch a guy open cards and know that he's going to mail you the ones that are from that team. It's cool. Like, I once did it for I was like, in 2020 when everybody was really getting into it,
I was like, well, I really want to, get in this break, but what's the cheapest team I could get? Maybe try to, pull an auto. And the Angels were like the cheapest one because I'm cheap. And so I was like, let's do Angels. And sure enough, Reed Detmer's autograph. So I was like, all right, end up selling that card for like $50-$60 to, buy some other cards or buy some other packs. So it's fun. Baseball cards are fun. Really want the cool mint hat back there to be available again for purchase. Yep, I did buy the hat. I don't wear Cardinals gear as someone that covers the Cardinals, but I had to buy the hat because that logo, and you can see it next to the teddy bear below me, is so cool. Sonny Gray was wearing this hat after a Cardinal game one day, post-game, and we went in there, interviewed him after a day he pitched, and I went right upstairs and tweeted, y'all are going to love this hat. When you see it on the post-game interviews on Bally at the time, you're going to love it. And sure enough, it sold out the next day. Because everybody went to whatever website it was, as I did, and was like, I'm going to buy this hat. And so I thought it would be a cool background for me. It sold out right away. No, seriously. I think I did it. I did my podcast, which sometimes lasts till 1 a.m. Thanks for being here for the live stream, which means I don't have to do that until 1 a.m. tonight. And before I went to bed, 1:30 a.m., I was like, if I don't buy it now, and I hate buying money. Like I said, I'm cheap. I hate buying stuff for money. It was like $38, which is a little steep for me for a hat, but that's the going rate these days. But I was like, I got to do it. It's a cool hat. So I did. No regrets. Thoughts on Romero? He's just fine. He'll be just fine. He's a good player, and he's a good mentality too. He's got that reliever's mentality. I'm a big JoJo fan. I like to see him pitching better lately. A. Lincoln loves the show, so that's enough for me. That's going to do it, though, guys. It's been an hour. You've been awesome. It's been real. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, there's a world in which I think about doing this as a nightly thing. Obviously, when there's a game, though, it means it's later. So it's tricky, but sometimes it's nice to do this. You guys can supply some very good insight and content and comments. I can talk about it for an hour. I'll post the audio of this on Spotify. So search B-Schaeff Daily. Would love to pick up a few followers on Spotify if you're so inclined. And this will be on there tomorrow as a podcast, so you can check it out if you missed any of tonight's stream. Thank you guys so much. Subscribe before you get out of here. You have been a wonderful audience. Your participatory nature has been much appreciated. Yeah, off days. It makes a lot of sense, I feel like, to do these on off days. So appreciate y'all, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily and B-Schaeff Daily Live. Peace.